Hello. So week 6. This is an interesting chapter. It has society issues. It has historical, political issues, including racist issues. It has some biochemistry. It's a good one, and I provided you with some additional links here. None of these are for the quiz, but hopefully you will enjoy them. And here's the quiz. So, we're dealing with cocaine and amphetamine in this chapter, and certainly they are highly interrelated, and they each have their own history. Um, and their biochemistry is related. I'm not a fan of either because they make people hypervigilant. They can make people hypervigilant and paranoid and uh, possibly violent, and they make me nervous. So, they're going to deal with nicotine and caffeine in other chapters. And so let's see what we've got. I don't think I have a ton to add here. The history of coca leaves, Incas. We've danced across this in earlier chapters. Um, the Spanish loved this drug because the natives, which were basically used as slave labor, could work long and hard with less fatigue under the influence of coca. And the the addition of lime is an interesting twist that they figured out. It helps with absorption, and it's interesting to note that communities settled around places where lime could be mined, and I couldn't find a good picture of uh, that combination, but it's basically rolled up. So there's a good wiki entry here, as there often is, on cocaine. And there's the structure, a little more 3D than we're used to. Um, Effects of the drug. And there's your pupils, which, if you're pulled over by the police, they will be very interested to look at your pupils. Um, there are accepted medical uses, and they are it historically was quite valuable um, for the eye and the mouth. And they're the neurotransmitters that are primarily effective: serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. All of those are monoamines, suggesting that they have one amine group. And there's some fun stuff to look at. And there's our friend cocaine, and there's injecting, which I still can't relate to, and how it can affect the body. And so it's a nice entry, as Wiki often does for us. And no, I haven't mentioned this one, that when Pope Francis went to Bolivia, a major source of coca leaves, um, he was going to chew some when he went to Bolivia. I don't know if this happened, but the BBC reported that it was planned. And of course, one issue would be whether he would do straight leaves or whether there would be an addition of lime type substances to increase absorption. So that's kind of fun. And, he's chill and he's from South America. And we've already alluded to Pope Leo the 13th, I believe, but here he is again. And Vin Mariani. And that apparently made people quite happy. And cocaine was in Coca-Cola and part of the name. And there's a picture of the Pope again. So, what I like about this book is things are being repeated, and it reinforces the importance of certain topics. So there's how it's grown and how important it was for some South American cultures, and the mention of the Spaniards who liked it because they got more work out of their slave laborers, and there's the wine, local anesthetic. Boy, this can work really well, and if you're going to have your eye or your mouth messed with, you would like a local anesthetic like cocaine. Freud is famous for having used cocaine. He thought it could be used to treat opiate addiction. That really doesn't work out that well. This is a very depressing blue box, but an important one. How the Harrison Narcotics Act comes up again, and how we love to use the legal system and laws to suppress minorities, and this is just so true and so depressing. And the the difference between powder cocaine and crack cocaine and criminal penalties was massive and 100 times harsher for crack than powdered cocaine. And we tried to level that playing field under Obama. And we did do some good there. Um, and here's good news: we tend to not lynch people anymore. Jeez, but we still shoot them and kneel on their necks. Um, so there's some stuff about Freud and what he thought cocaine could be used for, and some early legal controls and cocaine toothache drops. That would definitely work. That would definitely work. Um, and there's cocaine being snorted. Uh, that's a very effective way to quickly get a drug to affect the brain. And basically, if you want something to be fun and potentially more addictive, you want things to hit you fast and hard. And there's different ways the cocaine uh, can be produced, and there's freebasing and rocks, and mouth insufflation, injection, inhalation, and you can predict uh, the relative speed with which those would work. Um, Powder cocaine was used by the elite for a while, and then crack came along and was way cheaper, and people without a lot of money could use it, and therefore we started beating up on them because we don't mind it when the elites used it, but uh, we do care when poor folk do. And this story about the death of a basketball player, Tip O'Neill, he spoke at the University of Scranton during my lifetime. That was pretty controversial, uh, but he was here. And there was a confluence of events that made it that the society and federal government became very vigilant and sort of, came down hard on people. And these are grim data. Data is a pronoun, and the unbalanced way in which drug laws are applied to different racial groups. And that's a little bit 3D. So, and you don't have to know it, but take a look. It's a monoamine. There's one amine group over there on the left. And norepinephrine is a monoamine, and serotonin is a monoamine. And this is not a neurotrans. This is cocaine, and it blocks the reuptake of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, which are monoamines. And blocking reuptake is also how Prozac works as an antidepressant. In other words, you're releasing your own neurotransmitters, but the drug impedes turning off the neurotransmitter once you've released it, and can therefore increase the effects of the neurotransmitter. And structurally, cocaine looks like the catecholamines, which are dopamine and norepinephrine, less so serotonin. And a graduate of the University of Scranton discovered the cocaine transporter on dopamine neurons, and he's way famous. I met him. He spoke here. He loves Scranton. And absorption and elimination. If you're chewing and sucking leaves, you're not going to get a rush. It's going to hit you slowly and can affect you longer. But if you extract the cocaine from the leaves and then snort it, or God help you, inject it, you're going to get a very intense effect. Now, half-life, this must have been mentioned before, although I don't remember talking about it. So half-life is what it says, half-life. How long the drug remains at least half of the original dose before it drops below. And different drugs can have wildly different half-lives. Prozac, for example, has a huge half-life, which is probably one of the reasons it can be as effective as it is. Here, the half-life is about an hour. And then, of course, another issue is if you're going to be blood tested, how long can it be detected? Days. And there's the local anesthesia, and Procaine, Novocaine is used a lot now. We don't use cocaine typically directly. And Procaine basically does the same thing to the sensory nerves and can produce profound and merciful local anesthesia. And the fatigue in the workers and athletes, entertainers, politicians have used it. We don't use it systemically, medically, virtually at all. And there's discussions of acute and chronic toxicity. And of course, when you're buying your recreational drugs from illicit sources, you're not getting it straight. It's adulterated by chuckleheads, and the adulterant can be more of a threat to you than the drug you're taking. Um, and there's an example, uh, levamisole. Uh, they sometimes cut cocaine with, um, and it can interact with alcohol potentially, but the book isn't too sure of that. And paranoid psychosis, yeah, there's a good time. Hypervigilant, not sleeping, paranoid psychosis, guns are cheap and plentiful. Nothing bad can happen there. Hallucinating. Oh my God. Um, there used to be a lot of concern over the addictive potential of cocaine. That has been muted. There was a researcher at State University of New York, Binghamton, who was doing a lot of research on prenatal exposure to cocaine. That we were hysterical about, but that has become muted too. And there's a discussion of crack babies, and to expose a developing organism to anything is, any type of recreational drug is a bad idea. But the hysteria uh, that was prevalent for a while was pretty much overblown. And the data indicated there was no consistent negative associations between prenatal cocaine and several developmental measures, physical growth, test scores, language development. So that's good news, but please, please don't use cocaine or amphetamine if you're pregnant. And where do we get our cocaine? And there's Bolivia, where the Pope went, and 1,000 tons come in. That's a bunch, very profitable, and that profit can lead to a lot of violence. And of course, the drug itself can lead to paranoia and violence. Um, so there's some data of regarding current cocaine use. It's not crazy prevalent, but it's still out there, and I still worry about it, and I worry about amphetamines too, and medicinal tea, ephedrine. Uh, it can have therapeutic effects for sure. Asthmatics can profit from this, and mahuang, ephedrine, and they would use it for medicinal purposes, and then they noticed it could be fun. And there's Benzedrine inhaler, stuffy noses caused by colds. Yeah, that would make you less stuffy. Um, the symptoms you get with the cold and flu within limits are smart. They evolved to help you get rid of things that are hurting you, and drying out your nasal passages and irritating them can just make things more ugly. Um, yes, it can awaken anesthetized dogs, and that's kind of cute. And truck drivers were using it. Nothing like a wide awake, paranoid, uh, hypervigilant, possibly hallucinating truck driver, what bad could happen there? Narcolepsy. I've had a few students who were narcoleptics. Um, Sudden sleep attack, which can be extremely disruptive to normal life. A, it can be as disruptive as an uncontrolled epileptic attack. You can't carry your child downstairs if you're at risk for suddenly collapsing from a narcoleptic attack. So, drugs related to this are used to treat narcolepsy, and they can work pretty well. As it says, amphetamine can enable these patients to remain awake and function almost normally. One thing I don't believe is a very effective use is diet, which is here somewhere. Um, hyp- Hyperactivity drugs relating to amphetamine for hyperactive children definitely used today. And some students in colleges, hopefully not you, use drugs relating to this as cognitive enhancers to increase academic performances. And there's amphetamines went to war. Hitler, oh my God, his physician, without telling him, was giving him all sorts of drugs, including amphetamines, by injection. Hitler thought he was getting herbs and spices, uh, and he was very upset when he found out he was getting amphetamines. Why? Well, it's life and death. You could die. You have to be vigilant on the bridge of a ship watching for submarines. You have to be vigilant as a soldier, and being a little hyper vigilant and paranoid and directing your paranoia out there to the enemy may not be such a bad idea. And I have some links relevant to this. So there's Benny's. Uh, and there's amphetamine in there, and there's a nice little discussion, history and culture, and some of Sylvia Plath's novel, The Bell Jar. Yeah, no, it's these were used a fair amount by some of the elites, um, and some of them died. Uh, Not a fan. I have another link that shows something from a wiki photo page that was sort of compelling. And there's Benzedrine inhaler in the armed forces. And, again, I mean, you only die once. So you can understand why the military and soldiers would be very willing to take these kinds of drugs. Uh, and arguably, they save lives. Oh, look, Smith, Klein and Friends, French from Philadelphia, PA. It's a hometown or home state drug. Um, so it can be useful, but it also can be abused. Now we're going to get to methamphetamines in a bit, and I have some links there that are relevant. Um, and, some theories that it might help with heroin withdrawal, but that doesn't seem to be overly true. Physicians don't tend to recommend this anymore. And here's meth. So amphetamine goes away, and the users turn to methamphetamine. Uh, and methamphetamine, usually like local laboratories make it. And in my lifetime, the most famous representation of making meth and distributing it was Breaking Bad. And I have links to that in a second. But I mean, look at what goes into making meth. And you think paint thinner, starting fluid, any of those things sound very flammable or explosive to you. So if you don't know what you're doing, totally bad things can happen. And popular media, I will show you that right now. So Breaking Bad, that was a national phenomenon. It was really, really well made, I must admit. And I was fascinated by the chemistry, but I was at a point in my life where I couldn't handle watching an adult male, particularly an adult male teacher, making really bad life decisions. So I've never watched the whole series, but it's very highly regarded, and it gets its own Wikipedia page. Um, 2008 to 2013, and there have been spinoffs. Better Call Saul. Um, Supporting actor 3 times. I mean, it was really high quality, really, really high quality. And I think within limits, it was pretty true to the chemistry. Although one thing was that Walter White, the main star, was a high school chemistry teacher, and I just saw a review of a chemist and uh, what he thought about the accuracy of the movie, and he said that Walter White's high school chemistry lab had crazily high-end glassware and stuff. Uh, Jesse Pinkman was his former student, and I there's some comedic things on YouTube to deal with chemistry that are spinoffs of Jesse Pinkman. I really find them funny because it's chemistry, and I I guess it's really high quality television. If you haven't seen it, you might watch it, but it's a bit too intense for Tim. Uh, so I don't know, there's not a ton of these practical chemistry tips with Jesse Pinkman. Jesse Pinkman is the name of the character in the show, and this is one of their very short YouTube clips. They do include profanity. I'm sorry, but I find it funny. And yeah, this is real chemistry. One more. Or not. Um, there's one about Eppendorf tubes, which I've used in the lab, which is very funny. Um, so he was a not gifted student that Walter taught to do better chemistry through fabricating math. Um, they're funny. If you like chemistry humor, a little bit of profanity, I recommend them. So those are all my bonus clips. Meth mouth, this has shown up in some of my textbooks. Um, again, it seems to be overplayed. Um, the danger of it is overplayed, but I still worry about it. I mean, paranoia, vigilance, weapons. I don't like it. Okay, so there's our friend dopamine, and there's our friend norepinephrine, and we've seen them both before. And you know why they're so structurally related? Because you have to make dopamine to make norepinephrine. And they're monoamines, and you can see the monoamine ring there. And serotonin isn't here, but it's also a monoamine. Um, just look at the pictures, look at the structural similarities. And geez, there's amphetamine, and there's methamphetamine, which, by the way, is more impactful because it penetrates the brain better. You want a good rush, you want something to penetrate your brain better. And ephedrine, which we saw earlier, is there. Yeah, no way you have to memorize any of this stuff, but you know, structure is important. And so there's adding a methyl group, and the textbook gives you some things to study at the end, and the relationship between structure and these and drugs, chemical structure of neurotransmitters and drugs is very important. And there's the blood-brain barrier, our old friend. Like cocaine, amphetamines increase the activity of monoamines. And in case you've forgotten, which you definitely should remember, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And I like that there's a comma before the and. I'm a big fan of that comma. Instead of working primarily by blocking reuptake, which was the case for cocaine, here they also certainly promote the release of your neurotransmitter and inhibit reuptake. So it's a very powerful effect. And of course, if you're promoting release and blocking reuptake, you're depleting your stores pretty much. So you can run out of the neurotransmitters involved. And there's our old friend, the nucleus accumbens. When you think of the nucleus accumbens, you should also think of VTA, ventral tegmental area, and increase in dopamine levels in nucleus accumbens. We said earlier that is going to show up in virtually all of our recreational drugs and reward systems. And in humans, dopamine seems to be very important, but it's not the whole. It's not the whole story. Certainly, norepinephrine is important, and these are dirty drugs, not in the sense that I mean they're not well manufactured. It's that they affect more than one neurotransmitter system. And you shouldn't be surprised by that if the two, certainly norepinephrine and dopamine, where the neurotransmitter have such similar chemical structures, and serotonin is in the ballpark too, you shouldn't be surprised that a drug that affects one of these monoamine neurotransmitters also affects the other. And I'm sure half-life will come up here again. Yes, 5 to 12 hours. That's pretty long half-life. So that's one of the reasons that the military would like it, because you could get through the night maybe watching for Nazi submarines, or worrying about snipers with amphetamine related drugs. Um, and rapid tolerance. And as I just mentioned, you can, you're displacing your own neurotransmitter from your neurons, and you're also blocking reuptake. So you could really deplete uh, neurotransmitters, producing a form of tolerance. Um, yeah, they were used for depression and fatigue, and certainly fatigue would be alleviated. Of course, you have the side effects of hypervigilance, paranoia, and weapons. Um, they rarely used for these purposes today. Although, if you were affluent and you had a doctor in your pocket who would give you anything you wanted, you could, score some of this for your real or alleged depression. Weight control. This was popular for a while, and there were some over-the-counter things, supplements you could get with ephedrine in them, and sometimes that did not end well. And as the book points out, you're on watch on a destroyer looking for submarines. You just have to stay awake today. But if you're trying to take drugs to change your uh, body mass index, that's years in the making. And again, affluent people can sometimes get these drugs because they need to look good for a movie or a photo shoot, but not long term. And I've mentioned narcolepsy already, and it's serious and it needs treatment. It can hugely disrupt your life. Um, so I'm a fan of that, and it can work pretty well. And ADHD, there's the DSM definition in the box. Um, it can help with anxiety and improve concentration, which seems mysterious given what it does to people who are using it recreationally. But if you have issues with your catecholamine, norepinephrine, and dopamine, or monoamines systems in the brain, um, you can come up with ways where a little bit of facilitation in these systems can make a difference in the functionality of the person. Um, I'm not overly concerned about this use. Um, there's reasons for concern. Giving drugs to young people is not something I would do without reason. But I forget who wrote this story. This is not a story; it's real life. Somebody I know's son started taking um, drugs for ADHD, and her favorite story there was he would normally come home from school and just throw his outdoor clothes on the floor. And after he started taking the drugs, he did that, and then he stared at the clothes on the floor and muttered out loud, "Why did I do that?" and picked them up and hung them up. Um, but you got to get the dose right, and sometimes they work for a while, and sometimes they don't. And the DSM-5 lists many of the diagnostic criteria, and the causes are not well understood. Twin studies indicate genetics are very important. Ritalin is still a common treatment, and it can help some people quite a bit. Although there are other drugs that are coming into use now that are less impactful directly on the catecholamines. And here's you guys taking stimulants um, to increase mental performance. And this reminds me certainly of the military. There's police officers in the military, and I do worry about hypervigilant, paranoid anybody, uh, mostly, I guess, police officers. Um, they can help. They can definitely help. Um, Sleep is good, and drugs that disrupt sleep can be bad. So sometimes, if you're taking these drugs for ADHD, you time them so that you don't take them near bedtime, and that can reduce the impact on sleep. It's definitely heartbreaking for parents to have to deal with these issues with their children because they worry, and some of the worries are like anti-vaxxers worries, but there's some reality to this. Now, this is interesting data. So here's methamphetamine on performance, and you can see a simple reaction time task. More meth, more better. But when you're asking people to think and make decisions, the data do not look very good. And false alarms. For example, if you're taking a COVID test, and the test tells you have COVID, but you don't, that's a false alarm. And in psychology, there's a whole field of research that deals with detecting signals in noise. And if you say yes to everything, you never miss a signal. But did you really see that signal, or are you just saying yes? And you can see that methamphetamine uh, on the left can be good if you just need to pull the trigger real fast. But on the right, if you have to decide who you're shooting at, that may not be so good. And athletics, I watch a lot of British crime shows, and athletes and stimulants come up a ton. And a little edge can make a difference. But people who really take a bunch, well, you shouldn't. I mean, it's cheating. Uh, when I think of cheating, I think of cycling. Uh, I I can't believe the amount of cheating goes on in that sport, and causes for concern. And there's acute and chronic toxicity. Um, and I don't know if this is the first time that this term has come up in the textbook, but cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, I think we all need it. I think we all would profit from knowing how to do CBT. And it can actually be used for ADHD, and it can be used for the treatment of a number of addictive phenomena, including cocaine and amphetamine. Um, Contingency management, uh, learning behavior, uh, motivational enhancement in combination with CBT, contingency. I can't say enough positive things about CBT. It can be a beautiful thing. Chronic toxicity, and there we go. Paranoid psychosis. Uh, People have been hospitalized by professionals uh, as paranoid schizophrenics, who were, uh, you know, showing those symptoms because of chronic amphetamine intake. And some of those people were able to keep taking somehow get the drugs and keep taking them in hospitals, and they remained diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenics. Yeah, I would not mess with these neurotransmitter systems lightly. And the mesolimbic reward system is involved in, natural reward, and definitely something you have to think about when you're thinking about schizophrenia and also depression. And we're done. So stimulants can affect fatigue and promote wakefulness and decrease appetite acutely but not long term. The coca plant, chewed for centuries, that's probably an underestimate. Local anesthetic psychiatry can be used well, effectively. Illicit cocaine, too easy, and can cause bad things to happen. They interact with largely the monoamines, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And dopamine and norepinephrine are also called the catecholamines. So two of the catecholamines are monoamines, and serotonin is not a catecholamine, but it's monoamine. Paranoid psychotic reaction. Boy, we don't need more of those. There can be dependence. It's less popular than it used to be. And ephedrine, that's where they discovered what eventually came to, the recreational effects of what came to be amphetamine. And structurally, they're very much like dopamine and norepinephrine. And short-term weight reduction, which I wouldn't recommend. Narcolepsy, I'd certainly think about it. ADHD, I'd think about it. Methamphetamine is small local labs, support your local meth manufacturer. Um, it's dangerous. You can mess it up. I do recommend Breaking Bad, and I'd recommend understanding chemistry. So these are important substances, not as scary and prevalent as the press believed at one time, but certainly still worth worrying about. And please don't try these at home. Please. Uh, Thank you for listening.